Hey everybody, Mr. Hampton here. I'm bringing you a presentation today to talk about MLA style. I have to say that out of all the things I teach, MLA style tends to be the more confusing because there are so many pieces to it. So when I go over this in class, it'd be helpful for you to look back at this video in case you forget little parts of it. The first thing that we're going to talk about today is just some general warnings about using MLA style, and then we're going to talk about an overview. What is MLA style? Why do I use it? What are citations, what's a works cited page, how should I format my paper, especially that first page because it's different from all the rest. And then we'll talk about how to cite in your essay, how to use the style guide. And as always, feel free to pause or rewind the video at any point in time. And if you want to view a presentation that I put together that's kind of like a style guide mixed with what I'm going over right now, you can find that in your language workbook. Okay, first thing that we're going to talk about is just some general warnings. The first of which is this: you always want to follow your instructor's guidelines. I've been in a lot of college classes, and it's my experience that teachers like to modify MLA style depending on how they want their papers formatted. So MLA, it's not one set rule that governs all these classes. Instead, there's some modifications that teachers can make. The other thing I want to mention is that MLA style is not the same thing as APA style. APA style is a different governing body. It follows different rules. There are a lot of similarities between them, but if you're looking for help about APA style, you can just hit Google and type in APA versus MLA, and you should get a chart or some sort of diagram that expresses those differences. Last thing, when in doubt, you definitely want to check with your instructor. Your instructor always knows best when it comes to what exactly they want. When I mention these things, these are the guidelines and the rules I want you to follow. But by all means, if you have a different instructor, go ahead and check with them. Okay, first off, let's talk about what MLA style is. MLA style stands for Modern Language Association, and all it is just a way of professionally formatting your essays and research papers. It's been kicking around for a while. As you can see by these books that I have in front of you, there's the 7th edition. You have to keep in mind that rules change, but for the most part, MLA has sort of stayed the same over the past 10 or 20 years. A lot of people ask me, MLA style, what is it all about? Why exactly do I have to follow MLA style? Why wasn't I taught MLA style in middle school or early in high school? You have to keep in mind MLA style is primarily used for colleges and advanced courses, like the one that you're taking with me right now. And I like to bring up the conversation by mentioning about dressing to impress. Let's take a little situation here. Assume that you're having a job interview. And if I asked you, okay, what are you going to wear to the job interview? You might think for a few moments, and then of course you probably have a pretty good question in your mind, which is, well, what kind of job am I interviewing for? Is it a business type job, or is it a job out in the field working, sweating all the time? Because that will depend on what I wear. So let's say you're an alligator wrestler versus, let's say, a computer analyst. Depending on what kind of job, you dress to impress, okay? You're obviously not going to wear the suit and tie going to alligator wrestling. You're going to wear something a little bit more comfortable so the gator doesn't destroy you. Same thing if you're a computer analyst. You want to wear that tie or that jacket to make you look professional, okay? So the type of job that you're interviewing for determines what you wear. Very similarly, if I take that question now and then I say, well, let's assume that you're going to write an essay. And I ask you, well, how are you going to format your paper? How are you going to make it look its best? You would probably come up with sort of the same question, which is, well, what kind of essay am I writing? If I just gave you a prompt in class and I said, write for 3 minutes about, what does love mean to you? You might turn out something like this. A lot of spelling errors, a lot of mistakes, weird formatting. But then if I said, okay, we'll write a college essay, I would like something more like on the right-hand side. And that's really the difference, what MLA style allows you to do. It allows you to look more professional and to be more professional in your writing. The more practice you have with it, the more professional and styled your essays will actually look and feel. Okay, first thing that always comes up when we talk about MLA style is I mention this word citation, okay? When I say cite something, when I say make a citation or may have a works cited page, a lot of people are a little bit weird about, well, what does citation mean? Citation just means you're using a quote from a piece of text that you've read that somehow supports your essay topic. All it is a quote from the story that you're using. You're going to use quotation marks when referencing the material that you're citing. Let me give you a quick example. Let's say I read a book and I saw this quote that talked about human beings are symbol-loving animals. If I'm quoting that and I want to use it in my essay because I think it supports what I'm talking about, I would use quotation marks. Notice quotation mark in the beginning, quotation mark in the end. For the most part, punctuation will go inside those quotation marks. When you use citations, you also have to use parentheses at the end to explain who and where the material comes from. For the who, it's typically the author's last name, and the where is typically the page number from where your material comes from. And there are some differences in that, especially when you get into websites, but we'll talk about that later. Same quote as before, human beings are symbol-loving animals. Notice, nope, sorry, I forgot the quotation mark over there. But notice at the end I've now added on author's last name, which is Burke, and then the page number in which I found it on. And this all by itself, that is a citation. I used it, I quoted it, and then I told you where it's from. And we do this for one reason. We want to prevent plagiarism. A lot of people read and they want to use things that they read, but instead of quoting it the proper way and saying where it comes from, they pass it off like it's their own idea. For example, if I deleted both these quotation marks along with the Burke and I said, human beings are symbol-loving animals, I would read that, and if I found out that someone else said that, you could definitely get in trouble for plagiarism. Even if you didn't intentionally do it, it's still in that danger zone. So you want to make sure that you're preventing plagiarism by citing things properly, using the quotation marks, and again, using where the author's last name. Okay, after talking about citations, the only other part of the puzzle is what we call the works cited page. The works cited page comes at the end of your essay, and it's really just a detailed listing of all the resources that you used, or what we call cited. Okay, so let's say I had 3 different books that I used and I cited from all 3 of those in my essay. At the end, I would say in detail, these are the books that I used, here's all the publishing information, this is all the information that I have. This is just an example that I pulled out. Just to run you through it a little bit, we've got works cited up at the top. We have author's name, the name that it came from, all the publishing information, publishing date, and then what kind of material was it. Was it a print book? Was it a website? We'll talk more about that later, how to format these exactly. But that's just the works cited page, so it's pretty easy to understand. So you have those citations that you're mentioning inside your essay, and then at the end, you tell me more detail about these are the works that I used. Okay, let's talk basic formatting for your MLA paper. You're going to use regular size paper. This usually isn't a problem for most people. Most of the paper that you buy at the store is 8.5 by 11. That's what regular size is. You don't want to use legal size or 11 by 17 paper. Everything is pretty much standard on a regular sheet of paper. You want to double space your entire essay. I do want to stipulate that means 2.0 line spacing. If you go into Word, usually right next to the boxes for left, center, right, and full, you'll see this little arrow sign going either way. That's line spacing. When you go to 2.0, that's double spacing your essay. Usually if I don't say that, I'll have some people actually physically hit the space bar twice after every single word. That's not double spacing. I know it sounds like it is, but it just means that between every single line, it allows extra room, and that's really for your professor or for your instructor to write and give you the commentary and actually have the space to respond back to you. Just as standard, 12-point Times New Roman font. You don't want to mess with any other font size because some are bigger or smaller than others. For example, 2 pages of Arial isn't the same thing as 2 pages of Times New Roman. So they standardized it. Everybody uses Times New Roman for MLA. You want to do 1-inch margins on all sides. If you have Word 2007 or later, it usually defaults already to 1-inch margins. If you have Word 2003, it'll be like 1.5 inches on the left and the right-hand side, and then up at the top it'll be a 1-inch margin. Again, just as you see up here with these toolbars, you'll see a toolbar that talks about margins. It's usually under page layout, so just click on that and then you can mess around with the margins. So just 1 inch left, right, and then top, bottom. Make sure everyone's standard. You want to indent the first line of all the paragraphs that you use. And I'll show you an example of that on the next couple slides. Oh, also, you want to use italics if you're referring to a work that you used. For example, let's say you're mentioning Romeo and Juliet. So in chapter 3 of Romeo and Juliet, if you say Romeo and Juliet, you want to italicize that title. And that includes all titles, and that's something MLA has done fairly well. I know sometimes people say, oh, you're supposed to quote it, or you're supposed to underline it. It's just standard italics for all mentioned works. Okay, first page formatting is always the most confusing, so let me go over some things real quick about it. There's no separate title page, but remember I gave you the warning in the beginning, which is always follow your instructor's guidelines. I've had some professors in college who actually say, I want a separate title page, which is formatted differently. If you need a title page, if you just Google MLA title pages, you'll get a couple examples of what they look like. But for the most part, we don't like title pages. On the upper left-hand corner, you're going to put some information. You're going to put your name, your instructor's name, your course title, and the date. And don't use a header for this, because if you use a header, it repeats on every page, and I don't want to see this repeated on every page. On the right-hand side, though, you definitely want to use the header function, because on the upper right-hand corner, you're going to put your last name and then the page number of your essay. And if you use the header function, and you actually say insert page number, that means every page that you go to, it'll update itself. It'll be your last name 1, it'll be your last name 2. And I'll show you an example of that in just a second. Under those two headers, you want to place your paper title in the center of the page. There's no bold needed for the title, or italics or underline. You can just go ahead and just put your title. If you want, I've made an MLA template that's blank for you to just fill in on my website. If you click on that, you can download the Word document, and it's already been formatted for you. This is going to save you some time, especially if you're just getting started with this. It already has the header done correctly, the page and the title itself, along with the first and second paragraphs, and it has a works cited page at the end. So feel free to use that to help save you some time. This is an example of what it looks like all done up. This is not the example that I have on my website, but this is just a regular example that you can see. So upper right hand corner, this is the header that I was talking about. You're going to put your last name, and then on Microsoft Word, instead of typing 1, instead what I'd like for you to do is actually just hit insert, and then up at the top it'll say something like page number, and then they'll automatically change on every page to 1, 2, 3, etc. Left hand side, your name, professor's name, title of the course, date, and I always get people that say, oh, what kind of date do I put? I'd highly recommend that you just put the date that the paper is due. I'm not going to look at this and say, oh, he worked on it last night, so it must not be a good paper. Instead, just put something on there that's the date that it's due. That's fine. In the center, there's your title. Remember, no italics or underline needed, even if you're using a title. Indent, first line of the first paragraph, and then first line of the second paragraph, and so on and so forth. And then that's it. That's what your first page looks like, and then that's where your essay really starts. Now notice this person doesn't have any citations yet in their essay, and that's okay, especially for the first couple sentences. Okay, let's talk really quickly about how to cite in your essay. I have two separate examples to show you, and both are a little bit different, but they follow just that general guideline that I'm going to show you. First example, let's say I'm writing an essay about romantic poetry. And my paper topic, let's say it's about a romantic poet called William Wordsworth and his poetry. I find a quote in a book that I've been reading. It mentions what Wordsworth thought about poetry, and I want to use it in my essay. And this is the quote. Romantic poetry is marked by an overflow of powerful feelings. That's what Wordsworth said, which means if I use it without quoting it, it's going to sound like I'm saying it, and that would be plagiarism. So to avoid that, we use MLA style, we use the citation. Citation looks like this. Pretend this is my essay down here. Wordsworth believed that romantic poetry was, notice how I have a beginning quotation mark, marked by a spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings. I end it, because that's the end, and then I say the page that it came from. Now, if you've been paying attention, you'll probably say, well, don't you need the author's last name? Yes, you do, but there's ways that you can get around that. If you mention the author in the sentence, there's no reason to put it at the end. If you do put it at the end, it's not a problem. You're not going to get marked down for it. But I already said Wordsworth said this, so there's no reason to say, oh, down here, this is the author's last name again. The only time that you would put the author's last name down here is if you didn't say it in some way here. And I'll show you an example of that on the next slide. So that's it. That's a citation fully complete. Next example, same kind of deal. Let's say I'm writing an essay on the grapes of wrath. My topic is about symbolism in the grapes of wrath. The quote that I find in chapter 3 is about a turtle, and I think that the turtle is symbolic. It stands for something else. I want to use it in my essay. The quote that I want to use is, "The turtle kept his head held high." I cite it like this. The turtle in chapter 3 could be taken as a symbol for the worker's inability to give up, the way the turtle kept his head held high despite all the difficulties it had faced. Notice quotation, because I'm using that quote, and then author's last name, and then the page number it came from. I could have gotten out of saying Steinbeck by saying, in chapter 3, Steinbeck says the turtle kept his head held high, and this could be a symbol for the worker's inability to give up, and then I would just end it by saying 14. So whenever you cite, you want to make sure you have that author's last name or somewhere in the sentence that you're using, and then the page number it came from. And that's it. That avoids all plagiarism, and you're good to go. Okay, we're getting towards the tail end. Let's talk about the Works Cited page, how to cite in the Works Cited page. This is going to depend on the medium of the work that you use. If you don't know what medium means, let me explain a little bit more. Is the work that you're citing a book, a periodical like a magazine? Is it a movie that you saw that you're quoting? Is it the Bible? Is it a work with no known author? For example, Beowulf doesn't have any known author. Is it a website that you got your information from? And this will be a big one for a lot of you guys. A lot of you guys are going to use your websites to gain information. And there's nothing wrong with that, but you have to make sure you cite it correctly. Is it a multi-volume work? Is it like an encyclopedia entry? Is it an interview? Did you interview somebody? Or is it something else entirely? There's a million different ways that you can cite things on MLA Style on your Works Cited page. So I have some tips for you. You got two options. The first one, a little bit trickier because it's going to require you to look up things. The second one is a lot easier, and I use it myself. The first, you can look at the style guide that's in your language workbook or on my website. If you click on it, and if you look at the style guide and you actually see, okay, well, I used a book, here's how I use it in a book, or here's a multi-volume work, here's how I cite for the Works Cited page in there. You can do that. That's very tedious, but you're still going to get the same information. But to be faster, there's a website called Son of Citation Machine. If you just Google or Bing Son of Citation Machine, and you type in all the required information about your book, publishing information, it's going to compile all that information together. This is just a screenshot that I got from the website. You want to make sure you click on MLA Style, but if you notice down here it has, well, what kind of work are you using? Let's say, it's a chapter in a book, or let's say it's a web image. Let's say it's a letter I got from somebody. You'll click on that. It's going to ask you a whole bunch of information about the work. You just type in all that stuff and you say make citation, and then it pops it out for you. All you have to do is hit copy and then paste it right in your essay. And that's one of the great things about Son of Citation Machine. And it usually stays very up to date depending on what's been coming out recently. Okay, that concludes our discussion or presentation about MLA Style. Just as a side note, you want to check the website for that MLA template I told you about, the MLA Style Guide, which is done by the Purdue Online Writing Lab, also known as OWL. And then I also have a link to Son of Citation Machine. Great resource, you definitely want to use those. Your language workbook, though, also contains its own style guide, which is exactly what I went over today. So in case you're not next to a computer and you need to know how to cite things, I definitely recommend you check out that. Also, towards the back, in the exam review section, I have 2 MLA papers in there. Both are examples of really high A-level or B grades. And if you're interested in how to get started with the essay, what does a thesis statement look like, I'd highly recommend that you check out those papers. Okay, besides that, I hope you enjoyed the presentation. If you have any questions, feel free to email or talk to me in class. We'll see you soon.